Thank you, Ryan. Hi, everyone. My name is Felix. I'm a partnerships manager at Stay22. For those of you who don't know, Stay22, we're a friendly Montreal-based small affiliate network. We help travel content creators like you optimize, supercharge, and earn more from their accommodation affiliate links through different solutions powered by AI. I have the pleasure to be hosting the first edition of Stay22's Insight Series. To be honest, it couldn't come at a better time. Leslie and I had a conversation a few weeks back about what subject should we talk about for the first edition, and this very subject came top of the line right before things happened. So we all know what's been going on in the workshops of Google. So I have the absolute pleasure to introduce everyone to Lesli Peterson from 365 Atlanta Traveler. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to ask your questions in the chat. Ryan will collect your questions and we'll go through them at the end. I'm also mentioning that this session is being recorded and that we will make this available to you after this session. So without further ado, Leslie, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Felix. I'm so glad to be here. I've been partners with Stay22 for a long time, and I'm a huge advocate of them. And I appreciate how much money they make us. So thank you. So I'm going to share my screen in just a second. We're going to get started. I'm going to run through fairly quickly just because I want to finish. My goal is to finish in 45 minutes, so we have a lot of time for questions. And so I'll be back on screen for the questions. I'm showing my slideshow now. And here we go. Let me go. Make sure, maybe Ryan or Felix, you can confirm that when you're seeing my screen.
You good?
Good, good. Okay.
Leslie, before you get started, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
Can you tell us who is this presentation for? Is it for everyone, for veterans in the blogging community, or newbies?
Yeah, for sure. It is for every single person. So there are people who just started blogging and you're just beginning to figure out what post you should write, understand your cadence, maybe even just set up your blog. These are tips that you're going to need for moving forward as you're writing content. If you've been blogging forever and a day, like me, I've been blogging about 14 years, then this is going to be helpful for you too. And we'll talk about why that is in a little bit. I'm going to show you some specific Google documentation, but the short answer is because you're going to need, if you've been hit by any of the Google updates, you're going to need to update your content with some of the things that we talked about in order to see movement, even on your very best posts. And I'll go into what that means in a little bit, but it's for everybody. There's not a, and if you're not even in the travel space, or travel's maybe just a shoulder industry for you, it's still going to apply. Is that what you're after there, Felix?
You give a perfect answer. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So let's get into it. First of all, this is me. I have a travel blog. That travel blog is 11 years old. I've been travel blogging for about 14 years. I've made millions and millions of dollars with my travel blog and recently decided to move to Colorado, even though my blog is based in Atlanta. So I still have a team in Atlanta who is working on that travel blog. And now I am coaching people to help them with their blog. So if you feel inclined, please head over to my podcast and check it out. Okay, so what I'm guessing is that some of you are here or curious because you're either seeing a decrease in your rankings, maybe the posts that you had a target keyword for things to do in Quebec and it was at the top and now it's fallen to the bottom. Another scenario is that you had a big long post, things to do in Quebec, let's say, and it used to rank for 6,000 keywords and now it only ranks for 2,000 keywords. And even though you've been optimizing your posts with all the things that have worked for the last umpteen years and you're collecting backlinks, you're still seeing a difficulty in trying to raise those posts back up. So we're going to talk about why that is today. I'm trying to move the little Zoom guy out of the way so I can see my notes here. But so here's what we're going to talk about. Reporting with authenticity, reinforcing your topic authority, removing unnecessary filters, recognizing searchers' intent. These are, in my opinion, the 4 most important things that are being reviewed for the helpful content update and the April reviews update. So 2 things to note about that. Number 1, I didn't talk about the core update, and that's happened and then it's still happening right now. We're going to talk about that at the end. And number 2, some of you are thinking, well, I don't do product reviews, so the review update doesn't apply to me. And I have bad news for you. It does apply. Google changed the definition of what they call a review post or a review site. It used to just be product reviews, but now they're specifically calling bloggers who share their opinion, whether it's about which backpack is best or which baby stroller is best or which destination to visit is best, especially hotels though, it's all considered a review. And that's why it's really important for us to dig into what reviews mean and what the review update was about. So these 4 things though are things that we saw changes in with the reviews update and with the helpful content update. Okay, so the first one is reporting with authenticity. And I'm sure that everybody here is saying, well, I already do that, right? I don't use AI to write the bulk of my content, or I'm not writing about places I haven't been for the most part, or I'm not copying things from somebody else. And I think that's most of us as bloggers. I think most of us have integrity in that regard. But the thing that we need to do is learn how to make sure that Google knows that about us. And so how do we do that? Well, obviously using real examples, using case studies, using first-person language will do that. But here's the thing. Google wants you to share with your audience things that you could only know if you showed up there. I'm talking about destinations, for example, not things that you could glean from reading TripAdvisor reviews or visiting the website. And I think that I'm just going to be really honest. I mean, there have been times when I have actually visited the destination, enjoyed myself. I begin writing a lot about it. Let's say I'm on the 4th article of a trip and I'm tired. I'm done. And I just start writing. Ooh, I'm going to call it lazy. This was a great place. I really enjoyed the steak. The rooms are spacious, and I'm moving on to the next part, thing, whatever I have to do on my to-do list. And it doesn't mean I wasn't there. It just means I really wasn't making an effort to demonstrate uniquely that that was a place where I really was. And I'm not taking time to bring really thought leadership and original research to that piece. So look at this. This is SGE. If you haven't heard about it, you need to write this down. Search Generative Experience, SGE. It's coming. It's here, and it's not going away. And this is basically Google answering the question, The question is what I say, answering the question a lot. The question is the thing somebody's typing in the search bar. Things to do in Atlanta. Doesn't look like a question because it doesn't have a question mark, but it's definitely a question. And this is Google's AI response to answering the question. So in this case, it's World of Coke, High Museum, Children's Museum of Atlanta, and the list goes on. You can see some cards here. So this is my blog. I made it to this card. The weird thing about it is if I refresh the screen, I might not be in those 3 cards the next time it refreshes. It kind of circles through. Also, I've seen that I'm ranked #1 for something and it still doesn't show up in the card here. So it's kind of random. But the point is that Google's getting really good at answering the question. Do y'all remember we used to try to be in, we wanted to be in position 0. We wanted to be in the featured snippet. This is like position 0 and featured snippet on steroids. And aside from these little cards, no one's there. They're using AI to generate these answers. So I'm going to go to the next one. This is another example. Closest beach to Atlanta. You can see here that they're answering the questions and they're giving some interesting information, right? They're saying St. Simon's is a place for resorts, and Hilton has lots of public beach access. So it could be argued that that's a little bit of insider information. So what that means is that in order to rank, you have to provide even more inside information. I think a really good test is to run your query and see what SGE is bringing up and make sure that you're providing even more value, even more original research. Just here's an example. We do rank #1 for this, and we're still not in the card up here. And I will tell you, we are still ranking #1. We have not lost any keyword values, so we still have the same number of keywords as last year, and we're seeing less traffic on this post. And while that can be for a number of reasons, I have to believe that this is part of that reason. Okay, so that is original research. You have to do better than Google at answering the question. And if you're looking for an example, Earth Trekkers, and especially their Sedona, Arizona post, fantastic job of using original research. And you can see here that Google agrees. Okay, the next one is reinforcing your topic authority. Gone are the days of being a generic travel writer. It's going to be more difficult than ever to just be everything to everyone. So what I recommend, and what we've done on our site, is build what we call content clusters. So this is a way for you to understand your audience and build groups of content around what they're interested in. It has to be what they're interested in. It has to be questions that your audience has. And the interesting thing about that is that you're going to need to know who your audience is in order to answer those questions, or even know what questions are being asked. So, like I said, gone is the day of saying like, well, my site's really for anybody interested in traveling. I think you're going to need to get more specific than that. It might be destination specific, like my blog is destination specific. So it's really focused on people who live in Atlanta, although we definitely get traffic outside of that. But it's focused on travel in the Southeast. And that's helped us from an SEO perspective. It's helped us from a contract perspective, a newsletter perspective, all of those other parts of our business. So yours might be destination specific, but it could be flipped the other way. I just worked with someone who is a travel writer, and she bikes from like really long distances and works with travel authorities to put that in place and go through unique destinations. And so that's what she's focusing on. She's focusing on the biking aspect. Some people do solo travel. Some people do resort travel. I work with another person, and all she does is cover amazing resorts around the world. That's specific. But Travel anywhere, everywhere for anyone, not so specific. When you've decided what your audience is looking for, and you begin to understand what questions they're asking, and you begin to put a plan in place for answering those questions with articles, then you just want to make sure that you're linking them. I like to tell people it's called the web for a reason, right? Because we're building a web of interconnected, can you even see my hands? I don't know. A web of interconnected content. So you want to make sure that you're building that inside your own site as well. So here's an example. Things to do in New York City. I call that a pillar post, very high level, broad overview, not shallow, not devoid of original research, but still overarching. And then I might have a more detailed post about Central Park and the Langham Hotel and the best bagels, and ask me if you want the best bagel place, I'll tell you, and Times Square. And all of these are their own individual posts, and they're all linked together. Supporting post, pillar post, internal linking, that's a content cluster, 3 components. Here's another example. This is the one we just reviewed, but I can have a pillar post that is things to do in New York State, where things to do in New York City is a support post for that. So it serves as a pillar post and a support post. And then here's some additional support posts for New York City. I put New York here, sorry, but I'm just showing you that it works anywhere. So this is gardening. It doesn't matter what you're in. It's always the case that you want to tie your content together and build these clusters. So I think in my years of travel writing, what I see a lot, especially from people who are being paid to go to destinations instead of paying on their own dime, they'll go somewhere and the place will hire them to write a post, and they'll write things to do in, where to stay, best restaurants, and call it a day. And I'm not saying that's not going to work. If the difficulty is low, it might work for you. But if you can bring more value to your reader, if you can answer more questions that your specific reader has by delivering more content, then you're going to build more expertise on that topic. You're going to be viewed as more of a go-to person for that information, not just for your reader, but for Google, and then eventually for the brands that you're working with. Okay, so here's an example of one of mine. Helen is a city in the Georgia mountains, for those of you who are not familiar. So Georgia is a state in the US. It includes beaches and flatlands and mountains, and Helen is in the mountains. So I have a big post about things to do in the state of Georgia. And it has a lot of support posts. One of those is this one, what to do in the mountains. And it has a lot of support posts. And one of them is this one, things to do in Helen, that city in the mountains. And it has 14 bajillion support posts. But all of these are interlinked together. And what's fantastic about this, I'm going to tie it back to Stay22, is I'm not just making revenue from my cabins post or my hotels post. Because of the LMA script, I'm making revenue from every post. So I want to be sure to answer every question that someone has about Helen. Not just these, but, where to eat breakfast? What are the hotels? What do I do downtown? And there's a mountain coaster there. So can I take my kids on the mountain coaster? All of those questions are answered on the blog. All of those constitute a topic cluster. And it doesn't matter which entry point someone comes into, I'm going to make revenue if they're trying to book a hotel. So that's why it's even more valuable, because you don't have to just write affiliate posts in order to make the affiliate money. Okay. A really fantastic example of this. And just so you know, I don't know these people who I'm giving you examples on. So I don't know if they're here on the, I don't know. I don't know them except one person, and I'll tell you. But I figured it was okay to share because I'm only saying good things about them. But this is Full Suitcase. And I encourage you to go take a look at her Iceland kind of landing page, hub page. She's done a beautiful job of not just depending on the category page that defaults with your theme, but building an entire construct around everything she offers for Iceland. And Google's rewarded her. Okay, how are we doing in time? Okay, we're good. Whew. Removing unnecessary fillers. That's the next thing. And interestingly, I think this is one that this is one, I'll just be honest, that hurt me. So everybody got impacted somehow by the updates in 2023. The way I got impacted was the April reviews update, which was newsflash to me when I was trying to figure it out, because I didn't realize that bloggers are now reviewers, not just product reviewers, because we don't really have a lot of product review content on the site. So this is where I started studying what goes in the reviews update. And I've made changes, and we saw a trajectory back up until the core update, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. But there was a reviews update. It might still be going on right now. It just came out, I want to say last week. It still might be going on, but we'll talk about that as well near the end. So what do you need to do to fix your posts for reviews? Well, oh, my picture's not showing up. The first thing you want to do is make sure you're cutting poor quality content from your site. And I want to tell you, listen to me now, this is twofold. Number one, some of you have posts on your site that if someone were to hold it up as an example of your work, you would crawl under your desk. It's embarrassing. And that's not to call you out. I mean, we all have that. We all had to start somewhere, right? And we have posts we're not proud of. The quality is poor. It's really old and we haven't updated it. You're looking at the pictures and they look like they were taken with a 1970s camera. Those poor quality posts have to go. And that's what we think about most of the time when we talk about poor quality posts. And when I say have to go, I know that some people have posts on that are old like that and they're emotional about them. You can unindex them. You don't have to delete them, but you've got to take care of them. You've got to manage them. But the second type of unhelpful content, poor quality content, is an otherwise helpful post that contains a bunch of garbage inside it because you were trying to meet a word count, or you were going off about a tangent that really doesn't answer the question that the keyword is all about. So you've got to cut the articles from your site that are poor, and you've got to look within each article and see if every word there should be there. That reminds me of going back to magazine writing days. So what I recommend is really looking at your intros. A lot of bloggers tend to write really long introductions because that's where you're trying to stuff all your semantic words, and that's not going to cut the mustard anymore. The other thing you want to do is help your reader find the answer, the immediate answer, very quickly. And I'm going to show you some examples of this. The first time I heard about this was actually at TBEX. Shelly Marmer was talking about this from an affiliate perspective. And then since then, I'm seeing it everywhere, especially as people begin to understand the reviews update. And they're calling it kind of the TLDR, too long, don't read, going at the top of your post. And so I'm going to show you an example of that. I started doing that in even my non-affiliate posts. It has made a difference. And then the next thing is to think about how you can use bullets and or graphics to get your point across. I'm not at all suggesting that you turn your article into a series of bullets. What I am suggesting is that we are quite verbose sometimes in areas that where we can add bullets to make it more scannable, to make it easier for the reader to consume, because we're trying to fill it with words. And while it mostly worked in the past, it doesn't work anymore. And I'll show you an example of that. Okay, here's what I was talking about earlier. This is documentation specifically from Google. I'm not just making it up. And when it comes to the helpful content update, they are putting a site-wide signal on your blog. So they say, if you've got a lot of information on your site that is little value, low added value, not really helpful, then you need to remove the unhelpful content in order to help the rankings. Look here. Some of you are thinking, well, I've got a couple, like I've got some old content that's not doing great, and I might have some filler stuff, but mostly I write darn good content. I might be. But look, any content, even your good stuff, not just unhelpful content, on sites with lots of unhelpful content overall are going to not perform as well. What this means is that you've got to go through your blog. And listen, I know this is painful. I have 1,100 posts on my blog, but you've got to go through your blog and understand what's helpful and what's not. And you've got to cut the floaters. No more freeloading. And then you've got to look through what's left, and you've got to make sure that you cut the fluff out of that. And it's not until you do that that you will begin to see a change, because it's a site-wide signal. So it used to be the case that we would make a change and we would see that post rise almost immediately, but that's not the case anymore. You're going to have to make a change. This is Leslie speak, not Google speak. My guess is the 80-20 rule. You're going to need to make a change to a good portion of your content before you begin to see all of it rise. And that, that can be a little discouraging, because you're working and working and working and working and things aren't moving. But I'm going to encourage you to not give up. Okay, let's keep going. This is Two Wandering Souls, Best Things to Do in Seattle. Their intro is a little long for my taste, but I'm showing it to you for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're linking out to their Washington State post from their Seattle post, which tells me they have topic clusters in place. They're also saying it was home to them for a better part of a year. And that's establishing authority and demonstrating some experience. And we can't wait to share our stuff with you. So this article is 63 Things to Do in Seattle. And it's a great article. But look, right under the intro is a summary. This is what I'm talking about when I say the TLDR. Top things to do in Seattle. Of our 63 things, here are the 8 that you really got to do. And then if you want more, well, we've got more for you below. So this is concisely answering the question, what are the things to do in Seattle, at the top of the post. And not just with everything, but their experience allows them to tell you, these are the ones that you have to do. A lot of people ask me, what's the difference between the table of contents and this TLDR that I'm talking about? And it's this: a table of contents at the top of their site would merely give me a one-line item for each of those 63 things, but it still doesn't give me an even better perspective of what Seattle is, especially if I can only be there for 1 day or 2 days. This allowing a person saying, of all these things, here's the ones that are most important, that's showing expertise, that's showing experience. And that's what I would recommend at the top of your post. So one of the most important things that we did, and we're still doing because 1,100 posts, making sure that our summary is very concise, that it demonstrates our experience, and we're bolding some of the key important words. And then we're adding TLDR information right underneath it. And I don't have table of contents on my site. And if you want to talk about that, we can talk about that later. So when you're like, Leslie, what goes in the top? Then do the elevator test. You're in an elevator for 10 seconds with a stranger, and they turn to you and they go, hey, I'm going to Seattle. What do I need to do? What should I look for? That's what you're answering at the top. You can't tell them all 63 things and about how your grandma used to live there and you like the house on, 4th and Main. You have to get to the point in 10 seconds before the elevator door opens. What are you going to tell them? Add those highlights to the intro, elaborate a little bit in the TLDR, and I like bolding the important words. Is that from Google? No, that's from Lesli. But what you're trying to do is increase scannability so that people stay on your article. Okay, here's an example. Again, somebody I don't know. Beach, Glass Beach in Fort Bragg. In California, there's this really cool beach, and it's full of this glass that's been rubbed, and it's beautiful. And the glass beach is a really difficult keyword. It's something like a huge search volume. And this guy is winning, and he keeps winning. And his article is super short, high volume keyword, high difficulty keyword. He doesn't focus on the length of the article. He focuses on the important information at the top, lots of photos that demonstrate that he's been there, bullets to make it more scannable, and he's winning. Okay, search your intent. This is number 4, and then we'll look at the core update. I think we'll be on time. I'm going fast, Felix. Okay, a lot of people, I got some abbreviations here. Let me tell you, a lot of people, when they talk about keyword intention, they hear, this is the ICTN. If you're gone away from me, come back, because I'm defining this, and I promise you somebody's still going to ask me what it is. Informational, commercial, transactional, navigational. These are the intentions that a reader has when they're looking for a term. Most of your content is probably informational. Commercial means I'm trying to decide if I should stay in this hotel or that hotel, or what's the best hotel. Transactional is when I look up that hotel because I'm ready to buy, and navigational is when I'm trying to get to that hotel's website. That's a basic definitions of ICTN. And that's usually what you're going to see if you're looking at a tool like SEMrush or SE Ranking. You're going to see this. A lot of affiliate classes will tell you, look for the commercial and the transactional words. And I'm not saying that those aren't important, because they are. But what I am saying is there's something much more to keyword intention than just this. And I would encourage you to do 2 things. Number 1, constantly look at position 1 and position 2 for the term you have, and try to really understand the behind the obvious information that that person's looking for. How is the content arranged in position 1 and 2? What is the TLDR about? What are the headers and subheaders? What are the pictures of? An example, this is a really extreme example. Before COVID, when you searched for masks, you got a lot of African face masks and also beauty masks that people put on to make their skin more clear. Not the case today. So that's a really extreme example of what happens when keyword intention changes. But it changes a little bit all the time. And with the Google changes that happened this year, they even began to understand intention even more and made even more nuanced differences within those. So for example, I can't remember the exact 2 cities in America, but there's this one city where if you look at romantic getaways for that city, everything lists the city, or lists the attraction. So go do this for your romantic getaway and go do that for your romantic getaway, and this movie theater and that restaurant. And another city, same exact keyword, different city, the answers that come back are all the most romantic hotels. Because there's a difference in the way that people are using that information, and you've got to understand it if you want to rank, because you can't fight Google. You're not going to win. So we have to adapt our understanding of what those keywords mean. Here's another thing that I do. I use ChatGPT, which I will hereby call Chad for the remainder of this program, because that's his name in my house. I always ask Chad, what's going on with this keyword? So here's the exact algorithm or prompt that I use. If a searcher types whatever, this case, pet-friendly hotel Savannah, Georgia, into the search box, then what are the 2 to 3 questions they're really looking to answer? What are they really looking for? What do they mean? However you want to say it, whatever works for you, but take a note of what comes back. So the first thing is, what hotels allow pets? Okay, file that under duh, right? But next, what are the specific pet policies and what are the amenities or services that these hotels offer? So I could do a couple things. Well, number one, I'm going to make sure I definitely answer those questions in the post. But number two, if it's so important that this is the information they're looking for, then these are probably the things that I'm going to bold, to bullet, to make easy for people to get to that information. And it will be the things that I include in my TLDR. This person I do know, Tamara. This is her article on We3 Travel, Things to Do in Tombstone. If you look up Tombstone, Arizona, which she's ranking very high for, it's what is the historical significance? What are the attractions? How do I plan a trip? And in her article, she answers all of those things very, very clearly. It's not like, because a lot of you will go, well, I answered all those questions. Okay. There's a difference between the answer somewhere in here, if I read between the lines, and answering those things in the post very easily, quickly, and obviously. And you can see here, Google loves her article. Okay, common mistakes. Number one, don't expect your updates to move the needle right away. Notice I have a strike through there. It is still the same thing with helpful content update. Anything related to helpful content update, you're going to have to make changes and wait for the next major update to see the needle move. But the reviews update is different. They just announced this last week, which is why you see the strike through here. It used to be the case that you had to wait for the next major update for your reviews changes to take hold. And Google said last week, we're not doing that now. We're going to continue to just roll out small incremental changes all the time. And so what that means is for the reviews update stuff, you're going to feel a little more satisfaction. If you make those changes, you'll see them more quickly. Here's the other thing, which is really about me. So if you guys don't have an ego, awesome. I sometimes have an ego where I'm like, well, my article does that. My article's best. I definitely went there and this person didn't. And you've got to put that aside. You've got to, if you don't put that aside, then there's no way you can change. So you've got to let go of being right and figure out how to make Google happy and your reader happy. Definitely your reader first, but you've got to learn to appease them if you want to see the needle move. And sometimes it feels ugly and icky and just gets so frustrated. And I just want to encourage you to maybe, I don't know, light some incense, burn a candle. But I think in the end, for me, where my family depends on this income, it's more important to put that aside. Also, don't underestimate the radical changes that happened and that are still to come. Today, new things announced this morning. Things like that you can now have favorites in Google and that they're going to have personalized search results come out. I can't even begin to think about how that's going to impact us. More and more things are coming. And we're going to have to stay abreast of them, but we're going to have to stay calm and be methodical about how we're answering the call. And the last thing I want to say is a lot of times people think that they shouldn't keep updating their old content, their decaying content, because they're so focused on all these changes that are happening. I just want to encourage you not to give up the boat on that, because there's going to be some times where you're not going to be able to be number one anymore. There's still value in being number two, but you won't be number two if you let your decaying content die on the vine. Last thing, I've got 4 minutes. I want to talk about the core update because all the things we just talked about were not core update related. I am still trying to find this what I call the SEO scientist take on the core update, and I'm not seeing a lot. But based on what I am seeing, so based on what I see my students happening with my students, what I see happening with my own blog, and what I'm hearing from what I call the SEO scientists out there, this is my perspective. So a lot of the things we talked about today, unless I said otherwise, almost everything was based on Google documentation. What I'm about to show you is Leslie's opinion, so you can take it for what it's worth. But what I'm seeing is a prioritization within the search result set of product and service-based businesses over content creators. So because of the length of time we've been doing SEO and the amount of subject matter expertise we have, it is very common for us to beat all the travel tourism boards on Google. We've done that for a decade. And all of a sudden now, even with an article that has 2 sentences on it, the tourism board is beating us. Sometimes also tour operators are beating us. So I'm seeing that, across the board. The other thing is websites with a lot of repeat visitors. So examples of this, a lot of people think that Reddit and TripAdvisor, some magazines beating us in the rankings is really about UGC content, but I don't think it is necessarily. I think that it's a matter of trust. So if you recall, Google ranks things by EEAT. The T stands for trust, and they are measuring trust based on how often a person comes back to the site. And I don't mean like some of us are really proud of our like 20% return rate. That's me. I don't know if I should be, but I'm proud of my 20% return rate. But I'm talking about people like Reddit, like TripAdvisor, like US News, who are getting, 80% return rate of the visitors. I think that's really what is happening. And because of that, a lot of magazines are beginning to beat content creators, especially in the travel space. Is this 100% accurate? I mean, I don't know. Gary Isles hasn't given me a pat on the back and told me I figured it out, but this is what I'm seeing repeatedly across travel and other industries. So what do? This is my recommendation. We can't all depend on ad revenue anymore. You have to figure out how to increase your revenue per reader. Stay22 is a big, big part of that. Number 2, you've got to prioritize your email list. If you don't have one, you've got to get one. If you've got one, you've got to double down on its importance and its priority. I will tell you, so we make tens of thousands of dollars a year on our email list. It's done in part with contracts, but it's also done in part with affiliates, specifically Stay22, especially putting nurture series together based on what content people are looking at. You've got to work with your topic authorities, reinforcing your experience, making sure that your internal links are set up correctly, and that you are not being lazy like I was about explaining your original research when you were there, what was different, beating SGE, beating Google, with what the AI can offer. You've got to offer something better. Streamline those introductions and make sure you're looking at keyword intention. It is 15 after the hour and I am done. Woohoo, I did it.
You're perfectly on time. I'll let you catch your breath for a quick second. You mentioned some really, really interesting things. That part with Shelly Marmer's TLDR segment made me laugh a bit because right after TBEX, I noticed that quite a few creators were starting to implement exactly that, and it seems like it's working pretty well. Not only when it comes to the structure of your content, but also to help with the monetization aspect of your affiliate structure, which is really interesting. And also about keyword by intent. I've been observing that for quite some time, and I don't have any data to back this up. It's purely based on my observation, but travel blogs who tend to have a higher commercial intent by keyword, let's say above 50%, tend to perform a lot better with affiliates. I'm still hoping to get some more data and studies to back this up, but it's really interesting that you mentioned that it's it's becoming really important to be ranked well with Google, but also with your monetization strategy, which is pretty interesting. The only thing I'm not so sure about is that bagel situation. I'm pretty convinced, yeah, that still that the best bagels are in Montreal and New York City. If you have any new Yorkers attending, I'm really sorry, but you have to try our bagels because I can tell you they're much better.
We'll see. We'll see.
Um, just a few quick questions to hop on the subject. Oh, sorry, my cat is making an appearance. Say, what would you say to someone who would be coming to you and tell you that they've lost 80 or 90% of their traffic overnight? What is the number one thing they should focus on right away to try to save the day?
The first thing I would do is look in, sorry. Look, I actually had someone ask me this like an hour before we got on. I would look and see who's beating you, because so you'll have to take article by article, and I would start with, maybe the first 10 or 20 that were making you the most money before that, or bringing you the most traffic. And I would say, who's beating me? Because if it's just like, if you just tanked because now tourism boards are beating you, and US News and World Report's beating you, and TripAdvisor's beating you, then that's a different story than if other bloggers are beating you. So if other bloggers are beating you, and if you've lost that much traffic, that's probably the case, then I would start with 20. Take those 20 articles, and I would make sure, I would go into the article and I would say, what's the keyword intention? Am I answering the question? Am I cutting the crappy content out of these posts and making sure that only the best is there? Can I put a TLDR in? And then I would move to the next one. So that'd be the first thing I did. And additionally, in that process, you're going to have to look at each one and go, okay, do I do all that to this, or do I unindex it or delete it? But the idea is the hard part is that you've got to fix the majority of your content before you're going to see the needle move. And what you have to look at each one and say, is this unhelpful content, or is this otherwise helpful content and I just need to rework it? But this is a long-winded answer, but it all starts with making sure that you understand the keyword intention, because if you don't, you can answer that question all day wrong, but it's not going to work if you're answering the wrong question. There
Awesome.
You go.
Word of the day, keyword intention, phrase of the day. What do you think, and that's purely hypothetical, but what do you think Google has in reserve for travel content creators for, say, next year?
Ooh. Well, they are working on something called Gemini. If you're interested in all of that, check that out. That is the next level AI. So it's going to be able to do a lot with your photos and your videos. That's coming. Personalization's out there, which is interesting because that's because the information gain patent was approved. And what that means is that Google can now look at on a person by person basis what you've evaluated, what you've looked at before. And so there's two things that are going to come out of that. Number one, if you run things to do in Quebec, you look at some of those articles, they're not exactly what you want, and you decide to rerun the search, it's going to take those original articles out of the search and produce a whole new set. So what does number one really mean anymore? And then the second thing that it's going to do is kind of the opposite. It's going to say, well, you're always looking at Quebec stuff, so we're going to start putting Quebec stuff like in your discovery feed and everything. So if you really have nailed down your audience and your market, then maybe you're going to be showing up in those personalized searches more and more. But I think it's more likely that the new AI and the the individual search result sets after immediate refresh are going to be detrimental to us. And I think that we're going to really have to hone in on raising the revenue per reader if we want to continue to operate as a business.
That's a really good point to keep in mind. Leslie, before we move on to the Q&A, I think we have a bunch of questions there. If for the people who don't know you already, you're not only very good at talking about Google, of course, but you're an expert in many subjects. If people are interested in some coaching or resources created by you, what can they expect to get from your expertise?
We have a membership, and that's what we're focusing on right now. If you go to leslipeterson.com, and Leslie doesn't have an E on it, you can see there's a community you can join for free if you'd like to. But if you're looking for access to me, I would encourage you to join the membership. We have a sale going on until November 27th. It's $29 a month. You get access to all of my courses, monthly workshops, a compass framework, which is a framework for moving your blog to 7 different stages, a big focus on affiliate marketing and the changes from Google. We have monthly Q&A sessions where you get just to blast me with questions and I answer them. And we have an AI tool that will search it all for you and bring you back exactly what you need so you don't feel overwhelmed.
Awesome, wonderful. Well, I recall your presentation about email marketing at TBEX. It was extremely insightful, even for me who doesn't do affiliate email marketing, sorry. So there's definitely a lot of cool stuff to check out in your content if you want to make this a successful business and increase your return on revenue per reader. Sorry.
Yeah, revenue per reader.
Awesome. Kyle, I think we're Ryan and Kyle, I think we're good to go with the Q&A. So let me get started with the first question. I'm sorry if I mispronounce any names. Question number 1, do you think redirect to another post would be an option for those poor quality posts? Question asked by Viajoteca. I hope I pronounced it right.
For sure, if they're along the same line. So you don't want to take a post about houseplants and direct it to a post about hotels in New York City. But if they're closely aligned, then a redirect is a great thing to do. I do recommend that you redirect it and then put the old post in draft mode. Else, if somebody's searching on your site, that post will come up, they'll open it, and it'll be weird for them. But a redirect is a fantastic thing to do with the posts you need to manage.
Awesome. Question number 2, what will be the ideal word count for pillar posts and supporting posts? Do you feel this has changed? Question asked by our Florida Queen, Faiza.
Yes, I do think it's changed. When I was teaching last year, I was saying, we never write a post for less than 2,000 words. It's kind of been a rule. We have posts that are 6,000 words, but I don't think it's as important now. I think what's more important is understanding what the decision-making factors are for that question and making sure that you're covering them concisely and clearly. And even though that's kind of one of those it depends answers, what I would encourage you to do is look at position 1, look at position 2, see how much, how long they've written, how long those posts are, what kinds of information they're giving, how it's structured. That's going to be the best solution for you. Because don't forget the Glass Beach post. I mean, he probably has 700 or 600 words in that post. Not very much. It's changing. The keyword intention is so much more important now.
Thank you. Up next from Tabitha, what specific things are we looking for when cleaning up, to help us determine if a post is unhelpful and needs to be cut?
Well, I'm sure for most people, if you've been blogging a while, there's a collection of posts on your site where you're just like, I don't want anybody to see these. So you can start there. But what I would recommend is, look over the course of a year, because whether you feel it or not, there's definitely seasonality. And look at the bottom, 10% of your posts and see, what are they ranking for things? Organic. So organic search, organic traffic is what I'm trying to get at. I mean, if you're getting stuff from Pinterest, then that's a clue that you should unindex it instead of removing it. But, see where it is. If it's not ranking for anything, or if it's ranking for 10 keywords and all 10 keywords, it's ranking on page 12, then it's probably not a keeper. And I should say, it doesn't mean that you can't fix it, but you might want to unindex it until you get around to making that adjustment.
To me, it sounds basically like when you're getting your seasonal wardrobe out, you look at some piece of clothing and you're like, I don't see myself wearing that again, so I'm gonna give it away.
Right.
It's like that, right?
Yes, it is the KonMari thing. You're just going to look at each post and go, does this spark joy?
That's exactly it. I love that reference. Okay. From Stacy, I missed the difference between table of contents and summary at the beginning.
Okay, so if I had a list of 63 things to do in Seattle, then the table of contents would probably showcase the header of all 63 of those things. But the TLDR, or the summary, or whatever you want to call it, would not be a showcase of all 63. It would say, for example, here are the 6 or 8 most important things. And so an example of this that we do with Stay22 is we have a list of 20 hotels to stay at in San Francisco. We don't have this post, but this is an example. So instead of a table of contents, which kind of just showcases all of those 20 something hotels, the TLDR at the top would be editor's pick for families, best romantic and most affordable. So I'm just showcasing 3 of a lot. The 3 most important. I'm telling you why I'm recommending them. And it's real succinct and it's easy to read. It's easily scannable. It's not just a table of contents. It's just a summary of everything you've got. This is showcasing your expertise. Here's everything, but this is what's most important and why.
Awesome. I love to call it the TLDR method. I think there's a nice ring to it. Shelly should probably trademark that at some point.
Right?
Samantha asks, do you have any tips on email marketing?
I have a lot of tips on email marketing. I think it's probably out of the scope of this, but I would encourage you to head over to the podcast. You can look through the episodes there. Also, you have to put your email address in, but there's an AI tool at leslipeterson.com where it will search all the podcasts. So you can just look up the email marketing podcast. That's a good place to start. If you are interested in that angle and you like the way that I brought you information in the podcast, then you might consider joining the membership too. We cover it there in depth.
Perfect. Up next, how do you grow your email list? What could be a good ratio percentage? I have 3 emails per 100 users, so 0.3%, with lead magnet after 15 to 20% of the page. That's a very detailed question, Javier.
I would encourage you to do the same thing. Multiple lead magnets is my secret, and I've got a couple podcasts on it.
Awesome. From Leslie with an E, this time, Leslie M. I had to pop out for a few minutes, so not sure if that was covered or not, but do you think this is all possible from a Squarespace blog?
I'd say that's out of my realm of expertise. I've only worked with WordPress. I'm sorry.
Okay. And then I think that's the last one from Lee. Do you worry about backlinks if you start deleting posts?
Do I worry about backlinks if I start deleting posts? Well, no, I don't take money for backlinks, so I not worried about taking somebody off. If a post has a lot of backlinks, but it still needs to be removed, then there's no amount of backlinks that's going to save it, because it's not, it's not ranking. So what you might want to do, if you're like, I have a lot of backlinks here, and I don't want to get rid of it, then maybe you either evaluate that, what you've written, and make sure the content aligns with the keyword intention, and you try to bulk up the value of that post, which may or may not be with words, but the value, so you can leverage those backlinks. But backlinks aren't going to save us. And so if the post is unhelpful or deemed unhelpful, no amount of backlinks is going to move it. So I wouldn't waste my time on it.
Good. I'm sorry that was a lie. There was one last question here that just popped in. Do you think it's harder to build a mailing list and have returning visitors with a destination-specific blog? Because many people tend to visit a country/place once, and so they will visit the blog or subscribe to the email list for that occasion, but then after the trip, they may not return. From Margarita.
I think that's a good point. It might be the case, but you don't know. You don't know until you try. That's what I would say. And it doesn't cost much to try. There's some locations that people come back to again and again. The worst case scenario is they unsubscribe. But what's great is that you can get them at the front end of their trip, and you can speak to them. Maybe for you, maybe a newsletter isn't right. Maybe a nurture series is what's right, where you grab them at the front end of their trip and you talk to them every other day for 2 weeks instead of every week for 2 years. But that's where it comes. You have to know your audience inside and out in order to answer a lot of those questions.
I think that's about it. Do you have any last word, comment you'd like to say, Leslie? Unless we have another question.
Okay. Y'all are easy group.
Do we have time for one last question?
I'm ready. I'm here for it.
Do you think it's good to keep table of content and summary?
I think you need to do what's right for you. For me, I do not. And I'll tell you why. I kept a project, as I tracked 20 keywords where I added a table of contents, and these are all things to do posts in relatively the same difficulty. I tracked 20 specifically for the target keyword with a table of contents, and 20 without a table of contents. And statistically, I saw no difference. Exactly the ones with the table of contents fell 0.5%, but I think that's not enough to call it a loss, but I just haven't seen any changes. So I prefer not to use them. I don't think using them or not using them will impact your SEO.
Awesome. I see that we're already getting lots of thank you notes here. Is there any last word you want to add, Leslie?
I just want to encourage people to do 2 things. Number 1, don't give up. Do not give up. And number 2, think about ways you can increase your revenue per reader. That is the train out of this mess. And Stay22 is a big part of it. It's a big part of it for me. So I appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Leslie, for being my guinea pig for this first edition of the Insight series. I appreciate you a lot taking the time and effort, and of course your everlasting energy to help us help the community and talk about these very important subjects. Thank you everyone who is watching this live or watching later, asking questions and trying to inform themselves. And thank you also to Ryan and Kyle for helping along the process, sharing the news with the world. We will send you a short note after this call, and also we will upload this presentation on our landing page. But Ryan will send you a quick poll just to ask for your feedback about this presentation, what kind of subjects you'd like to you'd like us to talk about in the future, or any comment you want to add. We definitely need your feedback and your perspective to bring that kind of quality content and products and everything that will make you shine and make you live better lives and bring bread to the table. If you want to hear more about Stay22, you can visit www.stay22.com. You can also send me an email at felix@stay22.com again, or just pop in my DMs on Instagram, felix.stay22 again. Thank you all again for attending, and have a great rest of your day.